What's going on YouTube? Welcome back to the GoTyGo channel. My name is Ty. If you are new, welcome. If you're returning, we are here to talk about the 100-kilometer race that we had last weekend. Got it done. The Mosa 100-kilometer mountain run. Wasn't the day we wanted, but it's a day that we're always going to remember. So with that being said, let's jump into some much needed, much deserved thank yous. First and foremost, a huge thank you to my amazing wife, Giselle, not only for race day, but for all the time, all the months leading up to the last year of getting back into running and the support that I've had from you, Giselle. So thank you. I love you. The rest of my crew, Taylor, Jet, my brother Colton, thank you all for being there, for the help. It was quite the day. You all played a significant role at significant times in the day, depending on where we were at and how we were doing. And huge thank you to my parents for being there at the finish line. Took longer than I was hoping, so they definitely were camped out for a minute waiting for me. But all the support was incredible come race day, and so I'm very grateful for that. So thank you all. I also want to thank all my friends, co-workers, everyone that's shown support again through training up until race day and even after race day, as we have been processing and kind of re-gearing up. So let's talk about our day. All right, so race day itself, we had some high highs and some low lows, but we're going to put those isolated events to the side and we're going to come back to those. I first just want to give you a chronological run through of our day and kind of what happened. So we started off by waking up at about midnight. We got up, we got some breakfast, some coffee, and then we were out the door around 1 o'clock so that we could get up to the start line around 2, and then the race started at 3. So 3 in the morning, 3 a.m., race started. We're going by headlamp and flashlight, and the race started fast. I stuck with the leader right off the bat, and we quickly created a lot of distance between us and the rest of the pack. I would look behind myself even just 3-4 miles in and couldn't find a single headlamp or headlight behind me. So we really put a lot of distance quickly between us and third and the rest of the pack. And I hung out with him for probably the first about 7 or 8 miles. And then at some point he jumped off the trail to use the restroom. And through the first 7 miles, we were running flats, power hiking anytime we had some steep incline. And so I kept that pattern going. When he stepped over to the side to use the restroom, I just kept going forward. And I didn't see him again for a while. So from that point, I took the lead, came into the first 2 aid stations that did not have my crew. It was just the run itself and the aid stations that they had. In and out of those aid stations quick. I did at one point, I think in the second aid station, took a goo from it. The flavor looked good. It was cinnamon apple, and I'd been planning on eating applesauce. I'd trained with applesauce, but this was a goo, and I had never tried the brand before. So we ate that early on, and it kind of upset the stomach. And so for the first 4 hours, I worked through that on and off, some discomfort in the stomach, but that I felt went away, and then later we ended up getting sick, but I think that's a little bit more unrelated. But early on we were a little off here and there from that goo, but we flew those first miles through the dark. I did take one stumble, took a little roll, nothing too bad though, jumped right back up and kept going. Flying though, we came into the first aid station that my crew was there, so it was nice to see them for the first time. That's also when we were starting to get some light, so I was able to ditch the flashlight and the headlamp. I got the hiking poles out because now it was time to do some climbing. And I remember just feeling super encouraged because I came flying in. I had a good amount of distance between myself and second place at that point. The race director was there, and so I was chatting with him for just a quick second. He wanted to look at my watch and see what my mileage was calculating at, which was right on for what he wanted. So he was excited. And then off we went for that first real big climb. It was pretty good. We got up to the peak. We were along the ridge for a little while. We went through some snow, and then came back down into the next aid station, which was Big Springs. And this aid station's significant. My crew ends up hanging out here for quite a while. My first pacer joins me for the next climb, and I think I failed to mention during that climb, second place had caught up to me and passed me. We kind of went back and forth a little bit, but he made it to the aid station first. He had really strong climbs. He really did. I think on the downhills and the flats, I would oftentimes catch him and close the gap, but his climbs were strong. And this was also during that climb, that's when the goo was kind of messing with my stomach. So that made it a little difficult, but we got through. We came to the aid station, and it was great to have Taylor, my first pacer, join. And so he joined me for the next 6 miles up and then 6 miles back. 6 miles up got us to about the 31, 32 mile marker. And then we turned around and came back down. And Taylor, man, you played a huge role for me. You really got me up that climb. There were some moments where the hamstrings, the glutes, the calves, different times things were really starting to light up. So I wanted to be fairly conservative, but you really helped keep a steady gas pedal on. We got through the climb. We got up to that aid station, which was awesome because again, not an aid station that my crew could go to, but it was the race that held that aid station, and they had just hiked up with empty barrels and filled the barrels from natural springs. And that's what we used to refill our water bottles and stuff. So it was amazing water. Really cool aid station to chill out for a minute. And then we came back down. And coming down, we started to pass other racers that were still making their way up. So that was super encouraging to be able to see and pass them and know that they are still going uphill to that aid station. And you're flying down and just continually creating more space between you and those other runners. So I started flying down, got a little bit ahead of my pacer, Taylor, which was a huge mistake of mine, because then coming down into that aid station again, the same one we were just at, Big Springs, got lost, couldn't find it. And when I say I got lost, the course, generally speaking, was well marked. There would be orange or red and blue ribbons that were tied to the trees along the way, so we kind of just confirm that you're on the right path. And I remember I was coming down on the trail and I saw one of the ribbons, and they always talked about how we'll have ribbons before a turn, and then after the turn, more ribbons to confirm that you made the right turn. Well, I was just flying down, I saw a ribbon, and right after that ribbon was a turn, and it was a wooden bridge, and that wooden bridge looked super familiar because there was actually several of them. And I was like, oh yeah, that's the turn. And I took the turn, and I should have looked for more ribbons to again confirm that I made the right turn. But I quickly ended up seeing hikers, and something felt off. I asked the hikers if they had seen a bunch of cars and canopies set up for the race, and everyone kept telling me like there's something going on down that way. So I just kept going. I talked to probably 4 or 5 different groups. Everyone kept telling me, it must be down there, just keep going. And so finally, after like a good mile or so, just finally told myself, this does not feel right, turn around, go get back on track. So I went back, crossed the bridge, and then finally, it took a little while, stumbled my way back into the aid station. So I ended up doing an extra 2.5, probably 3 miles just in that little stint, and came into the aid station pretty frustrated. I sat down at the aid station. I should have just gone over and sat down next to my own car, the crew car, and ate my own food and taken a little time to regroup. But I kept thinking to myself, like, dang, I saw 3rd and 4th place when I was coming back down. I know I only had so much distance on them. I just wasted my time doing the extra 3 miles, like they were going to catch up. And so I wanted to get out of that aid station as quick as possible. So I slammed a bunch of food, most of which wasn't mine. So, half and half. My wife was great and was bringing over some of the fruit and stuff that we had brought. She had made me a sandwich. Every aid station, they constantly offer you Coke and ginger ale. And I also see it. You see it on YouTube videos. You hear about it. You know it's a thing. Everyone kept offering it so insistently. I finally, at that aid station, was like, yeah, I'll try it. And I think that was a huge mistake. I don't think I was ready for the carbonation. as well as just the mass variety of foods I ate, the quantity. I ate a good amount pretty fast, and then was up and on my way. And I only went probably like half a mile or so, and started throwing up. And as soon as I started throwing up, like I had thoughts about going back to the aid station, but I was worried my crew had probably already left. And so I was like, I just keep going. And so I went like another 10 minutes or so after throwing up and realized I had no energy. Kind of got a little delusional, like my vision was off. I started stumbling. I did trip and fall at one point, and I landed in some shade. So from there, I ended up just laying down and fell asleep. Was probably asleep for a good 20 or 30 minutes because I ended up waking up, took a few steps, and then my watch went off and said previous mile in, and it was like an hour and 10 minutes. I was like, dang. And I know some of that was from the aid stations just sitting there. And then the walk, the half mile I was trying to do, I have no idea how long I was asleep. But I ended up getting up, and I would only be able to make it like a 1/10 of a mile, sometimes as little as like 10 steps, and I would drop to a knee, sometimes lay down if it was shade. I never got another good nap. I tried. I was like willing to give in and just try to rest for another minute to regroup. But every time I would try to lay down for another nap, the mosquitoes and the ants were just so bad that I would get frustrated. I would get back up to my feet. I'd try to go like another 10 steps, 20 steps, and then again, fall down, lay down. Finally, runners started passing me. And as runners were passing me, they started offering me some of their water and food. And I would take it. And I think the first few people that did this were just like opening up their Camelbacks, and I would just like chug it. And I think I was drinking it way too fast because then like within 30 seconds I was throwing up again. And there was like a social anxiety part to that because the person's still right in front of me. It's like, dang, now no one gets that water. Like you offer it up to me, I throw it up, now no one gets it. So it was just super frustrating. At one point, 2 dirt bike riders came down. I was ready to cave because they were offering if I wanted to ride down. They had offered me some of their water, tried to drink it, threw it up. I was ready to cave and just get on and have them take me back down to the aid station right when another runner was passing me, and he talked to me out of it. He's like, man, just give it another hour, you'll come back to life. So a huge thank you to him. I'm super glad I listened to him and I didn't get on that dirt bike and go back down. So I finally just kept working my way up, and once I got up the climb, because this is all during a pretty steep climb, once I got to the top of the climb, there was a runner that passed me that was pretty encouraging, and I ended up sticking with him for quite a while on the flats and downhills. He was feeling confident on the climbs, but he had wrecked his knees a little bit going downhill. So going downhill, he was slow. I was wrecked, so we stuck together for quite a while and just chatted it up. I finally made it to the next aid station just in time because they were getting worried. It was only 7-mile distance between those 2 aid stations, but a crazy climb up and down. But it had taken me like 5 hours to do that 7 miles from all the napping, all the resting. And at that point, they continued to ask racers who were passing me that would get to the aid station, like, hey, did you see anyone who was struggling? And they're obviously letting the race know that, yep, we saw this guy, he was throwing up, trying to take naps. So I get to the aid station. I stayed there for a little while. My wife had left to go swap cars at one point. I sat there for a little while. At this point, Jet was there. So he joined me. The race let me continue. They were a little iffy at first, but especially since I had a pacer, they were willing to let me continue. So Jet joined me at that point. When I left the aid station, that was probably mile 40. Yeah, so Jet joined and we had about 16, 17 miles left. And didn't have much energy. I was trying to eat foods very slowly, sip on my electrolytes very slowly, trying to do everything I could to keep the nutrients that I was consuming down. And every time I started running just a little bit, it'd be enough to kind of jumble my stomach, and I felt like I was going to throw up again. So for the most part, Jet and I were just like in a power walk and just suffered to get through that and finish the race. Took me 19 hours. It was a long 19 hours. I think the first 40 miles took me just over 8 hours. So I was flying, and then it just went south. Oh my goodness. But let's talk about those isolated events real quick, the highs and the lows. Okay, so there were 2 times during this race that I hit a runner's high that I've never hit before. Absolutely the highest I've ever been. It was incredible. The first one, I was probably 12 to 14 miles in. It was still dark, so I'm still going by headlamp and flashlight. At this point, I'm comfortably in first place. I look behind me and I can't even see the headlamp of second place. And I'm flying. It's a gentle coast downhill at this point. And I hit like 3 miles that were like 7-minute miles. So way too fast. I'm going way too fast at this point. And I just felt incredible, absolutely incredible. I ended up starting to pass some runners that had started 2 hours earlier because they knew they were going to need the extra time. So they were allowed to start at 1 a.m. So I started passing just a few people that had done that. So that was like super encouraging. But I just felt absolutely incredible. I think back to a Ragnar race I did once running in the night, and I think there's something about like you can't really you don't have reference points to know either what your elevation is actually doing or realistically like how fast you're even moving. And so there's an illusion about it when you're just flying through the night, and it felt incredible. The second one came down when I was right before I got lost. I had made it to the halfway point at that aid station, was coming back down, and this is where I got a little bit ahead of my pacer, Taylor, and then ended up missing the turn or making a wrong turn. And in that section, again, I think it had a lot to do with the fact that I was passing the other racers. Everyone was super kind, super encouraging. I was in second place at this point, so I remember how every time I would pass someone, their initial reaction would be like, he's only 5 minutes ahead of you. He's only 5 minutes ahead of you. And so like just this encouragement of like, dude, you're catching him. Because at first, the first people were telling me, hey, he's about 15 minutes ahead of you. And then when I finally got down to the end, I felt like they were telling me that he was just right there. He was right there. So I was catching him, and then got lost. But on that downhill slope as well, just hit another high that was incredible. My life, like I had mentioned before, on the climb that Taylor helped me get through up to that halfway point, man, my glutes, my hamstrings were just lit up, and my legs just felt incredible coming back down. So some awesome highs, and then naturally, as soon as things went south, the rest of it were just some super low lows. The lowest being like this close to just getting on that dirt bike and giving up and going down. But I just could not live with a DNF next to my name, especially for my first one. And so when I got to the next aid station and I knew I was still well ahead of the cutoff times, I was like, man, I could walk this thing and still finish it in time. So I might as well do that because I cannot live with a DNF. I did not finish next to my name for my first ultra. Not a chance. So Jet, you were incredible. The entertainment you provided, the laughs we had, especially for what a dark place I was in for those last 20 miles. So thank you for that help. That was incredible. So overall, when I think about this race, I have stamped it as a failure. And let me explain something here, because everyone has been super encouraging and super, super kind. The natural reaction is everyone's like, dude, not many people can do that. Not many people can go that distance. Just the fact that you finished, especially after getting sick and working through that and still finishing, like, you should be proud of that. You should be happy about that. And I so appreciate those kind words. But at the same time, like, I had expectations, I had goals going in, that have led to me being super disappointed with how the day went. I went to compete and was competing at a high level for the first 40 miles. Felt incredible. You know, many people have asked me, like, do you feel like you got sick because you went out too hard? And to that I say no, because for 40 miles, if I had gone out too hard, then I think I would have felt that a little bit sooner. I think cardio wise, my muscle fatigue, I knew the next climb that I was going into when I got sick was going to be brutal for my legs regardless. But the fact that I had to deal with the stomach issues on top of it was just what put it over the edge. And I don't think the stomach issues had anything to do with going out too hard. I genuinely feel that I was so frustrated, and I went into that aid station, ate foods I didn't test, number one mistake. Ate those foods too fast. There was too many different foods. I should have just stuck with a few different things, but I was all over the place. Didn't rest long enough at that aid station, just went and kept going immediately. Just took my sandwich, was like, I'll eat it on the way, because I knew again that it was going to be quite a climb and I'd be walking a lot of it. So I was like, I'll just eat on the way, but just didn't rest long enough. And so I do label the race, the run, the event, as a failure. And so with that in mind, I'm ready to jump right back in to get this taste out of my mouth. Because I feel like my body and my mind was ready, and we were having a day. I'm glad my mental space was where it was, because I think that's largely how I was able to finish and deal with the suffering for as long as I had to. But could have been a day, should have been a day, and it coulda, shoulda, woulda. Can't do anything about it. Because the last 20 miles was just a speed walk and it wasn't much of a run, I felt like the week that I've had of recovery, my body's bounced back super, super quick, because my body should be more beat up. It should have been wrecked more, because I should have pushed harder. But because that last 20 miles ended up being a speed walk, it ended up being like a huge active recovery for my legs. And so body feels good already. I've put a lot of training in, so we're going to jump right back in. More details to come. But we got to get this taste out of the mouth and grind on. But again, I do want to thank all of you for tagging along. I've been able to meet and make acquaintances with some incredible people on YouTube, on Strava, out on the trails. I've been able to meet some different people and start building this community. So with that being said, as always, I want to hear from you. What are you working on? What are you training for? Leave a comment below. Let me know. Let's hold each other accountable. And I'm excited to continue to recover, rest, and then dive right back in for some more training, because we have some unfinished business to take care of. Lastly, I do want to thank the race. I haven't thanked the race, the director, John. You put on a hell of a race. We did have some last minute adjustments. We only found out 4 or 5 days before the race that their course was going to be altered, and that we weren't able to do the entire loop, and that's what made it turn into an out and back. It added over 2,000 feet of elevation into the race itself, totaling over 14,500 feet of elevation gain during the 62 miles. For myself, I ended up running about 65 and a half due to getting lost and putting on some extra miles. But what an event, what a day, something I'm always going to remember. But until next time, let's go get after it.